Welcome all, this is Russ. I wanted to make a little video showing you how to use Git on the command line. Now, I know that a lot of people avoid using the command line. You'd prefer to do your development inside a GUI, and I totally understand that. The downside is that you can't access machines for which you don't have GUI access. And of course, when you're doing development on Lectura, which is our department's Unix server, you are not going to be able to use your keyboard and mouse and attach there. You're going to be connecting through SSH. If you've never attached through SSH, if you've never used Unix, I would recommend you go watch my videos about the basic intro of how to do that. But this video, I wanted to focus on how you would use Git on the command line. And as an example, I'm going to be using Cygwin here. Cygwin is something that you can install if you want to run it on your own Windows box. It's basically an open source implementation of Unix, the Unix tool chain on Windows. What I show you here should apply equally well if you're using the Unix subsystem for Windows. That's actually the Windows 10 just added that. Windows 10 just added that, what, a year ago or so. If you're a Mac user, you can open up the terminal, and all of these commands should work. There might be slight variations of them, but basically they should work the same way. Now, if you've watched my video about how to accept an assignment on GitHub Classroom, I've walked you through how to use GitHub Desktop, which is the GUI that will allow you to clone a repository, make a local copy of it, and then commit new changes. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it from the command line. So the first thing to do is to figure out what is the repository name. You can do this on GitHub by looking at this. You can copy this or just push the button and it'll copy. And so what you're then going to do on the command line is you're going to do Git Clone, and then you're going to give it the URL that you specified. Now what it's going to do is it's going to create a directory that matches the name of the repository. This is the HWC directory, so it created a directory named HWC. Inside HWC, it has all of the files that we expect. In addition, it has this .git directory, which is where it keeps all the metadata relating to this repository itself. If you are really, really geeky, you can look inside .git to see what's there, but as a general rule, you shouldn't touch it. Now, what we've just done is actually the exact same thing that the GitHub Desktop app was doing when we clicked the clone button. It's just that GitHub Desktop was providing a GUI wrapper around what was going on. All right, so let's say we want to modify a file. So let's go into HWC compile. We'll modify pt part.h. You'll know, if a little Unix reminder, you can use cd to change directory. There's a variety of different editors that you can use for editing text files. I like to use VI. A common one that people use if they're inexperienced is Nano, N-A-N-O. Some people love Emacs. You can use any one of them, but you can use it to edit any sort of a text file. So you can edit assembly language files, C files, Java files, all of those things. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go through and let's just add a line in here. This line was added by Russ on the command line. All right. So what we've done is we've modified this file. We can cat it. And see that the contents have changed. There's the new contents. Cat, by the way, is the way you type command or you type file contents on the Unix command line. Now, right now we've modified our local file, but we haven't actually checked anything into Git. So what we can do is we can ask Git what it knows. Git Status is the command that you'll type that'll give you a summary of your entire current checked out repository, everything Git knows about recent changes that have happened. So you'll see that we're on branch master. You don't need to know about branches, but you'll notice that master is our default branch for our repository. It says that we're up to date with origin master. So origin is Git's name for, quote unquote, the place I copied this from. So the repository resides on GitHub. We cloned that repository onto our local box. So origin/master is what GitHub believes is true about the master branch. What it says is these are up to date. However, there are some files that have been modified and they're not yet staged for commit. We'll explain what staging means in just a moment. But this is the same thing as we saw on GitHub Desktop, where there was a little diff that showed up that said, look, you've modified a certain file. And in fact, we can show this. We can do a git diff, and it'll give us the contents. We added this line and these two blank lines under it. So this is the whole change that has happened so far in this directory from the base level of the code that we checked out. Now, if we want to commit it, it's actually a two-step process. GitHub Desktop unifies it into a single step, but we're going to have to do two steps on the command line. The first is we're going to do git add. Now, you do git add and you give it the name of a file. And what you're doing is you're telling Git the changes that are inside that file are good things that I trust I want to keep. So now when we do a Git status, Git will tell us that there are changes. However, these are in the list of things that are going to get committed. They haven't been committed yet. However, we've told Git that yes, we're going to want to keep this. And so our next step is to actually do a commit. Git commit, give it a little message, added a comment in part.h, just an example for a video. So you do commit -m and then some message in double quotes. Now what it's done is it's actually done a commit. Now again, if you remember my video with GitHub Desktop, we saw that when we do a commit, what we're doing is we're changing the local clone of the repository. So if you think about it, there are actually two different repositories that exist. There's the one that exists on the GitHub servers themselves. And then there's a clone of that repository that's on my own computer. When I did this git commit, I'm committing to my local repository, which is cool because it means, by the way, if you're offline, you can do commits. You can do all sorts of work on your repository. You can do all sorts of updates, and you can be saving your work as you go. You can commit as many times as you want, and it doesn't have to contact the central server. However, when we do a git status, what we'll see, we're still on branch master, but it says your branch is ahead of origin master. This is telling you we have local changes that have actually been committed. They're in the repository, but the central server has not been notified about them yet. How do we update that? You remember on GitHub Desktop we had a push button. Same thing here, git push. What a push does is it takes our local repository and uploads changes into GitHub and says, and now the central repository is going to know about it. So if we go into HWC compile, pt, part.h, look, we have added a comment in part.h. This is our change. In fact, it tells us that this change happened 2 minutes ago. So there's the modification that we made. All right, well, let's go ahead and let's make another change here. Let's modify something. This added on GitHub. Made another change just on GitHub for the example video. And now, if we look at pt part.h, we don't see that change yet. But if we do a git pull, so push sends things up to the server, pull brings them down. You'll notice that it says that it made a change to pt part.h. And there it is. We made a change on part.h. So you can do this. Now, we are doing this here on Cygwin, but we could do the exact same thing on Lectura. So let's go ahead and clone the repository on Lectura. I'm going to get my password. All right, so I got my password, entered it, and we've cloned the repository over here on Lectura as well. And what do we see? Well, Lectura, of course, is just a Unix system, so all the same commands are going to work. This window over on the right represents my local machine. This window on the left represents Lectura. So let's go into HWC compile. Let's look at file. What we see is the line that was added by Russ and also the one that was added by GitHub. And of course we can do the same thing. This added on Lectura. Now, Git Status reminds us that we have a file that's not been staged. Git Add says let's add that file to the set. Git Commit added yet another silly line. And now, what state do we have? Again, if we look at GitHub, we don't see the change yet. But if we do a git push, and then we can look, and there's the change. Now, you'll notice here that we made a change on my local machine, and I also made changes on Lectura, and we were able to copy files back and forth. So I will be creating another video to show you how you can do simultaneous development on two different machines. It's a very common thing that people would like to do. And GitHub is going to make that a little bit easier. But I will defer that for the next video. Right now, the thing for all of you to remember is that in order to make changes, you always need to commit them, then you need to push them, and it is always a good idea before the deadline passes for you to go actually look on the GitHub website, browse through the files, confirm that the most recent changes are actually on GitHub and that you've not forgotten a step. All right, so hope that was informative, hope it was useful for you all, and I will see you all later.